Since we're now close to the halfway point in the postseason, it's hard not to look forward and speculate a little regarding trades and signings that could take place this offseason. Each player featured has proven to be a valuable part to their team for quite some time now. Therefore, as we usually do, we'll be taking a look at each situation and considering where these few players could end up. And with that, here are 3 NHL players that could be on new teams by next season. Possibly the most attractive piece available on the market, forward-wise this offseason, is JT Miller. Reason being, well, it's not every day that a top-line center, making an average of $5.25 million, puts up nearly 100 points. For Miller, who is coming off a 99-point campaign, he's likely aware that this could be his last chance in his career to truly cash in. NHL insider Elliotte Friedman, who made a radio appearance on the Dawn and Dhaliwal show, had his own insights in an article which I'll link below on Miller's predicament. For one, Friedman acknowledged that Miller's age and where he's at in his career simply don't mesh with the Canucks' current game plan, aka competitive window. And secondly, that Miller is going to be an ideal addition for win-now teams that have a younger core, that short one veteran to even things out. And lastly, the Canucks are willing to retain 50% of Miller's salary if need be. While referencing EliteProspects.com and taking each team's average age into account, the youngest contender per se on average appears to be the New York Rangers. Even though the team does have some veteran talent, it also has plenty of youth sprinkled in throughout the lineup. Knowing Miller's previous ties to the Big Apple and that Ryan Strome could be hitting free agency this summer, the fit is definitely there. To make things even more interesting, Miller is multifaceted, meaning he can play either at wing or center. Knowing that the Canucks have had interest in John Marino and Kasperi Kapanen before, would Rutherford consider doing business with his former team to send Miller over? If Evgeny Malkin departs from the Steel City, for instance, this may be more of a possibility. The Penguins tend to prefer players that can play center and wing both and could afford Miller if the right moves are made. Not a young team, but still seems like there's potential there. Regardless, like Friedman mentioned in the article referenced, there's going to be an all-out bidding war this offseason for Miller's services. Since we last spoke about John Gibson, you could say that not a lot has changed regarding his situation. He still has the reputation of being a really good netminder, still is one of the few players in his prime on the roster that's stuck in the middle of a rebuild, and still could be the solution for teams that are in need of that solidified starter in net. Interestingly, as is usually the case, NHL insider Elliotte Friedman decided to recently stir things up by speculating on an intriguing possibility for Gibson. Toronto is going to make a bold move this offseason. If they don't bring back Campbell, they'll look for an upgrade in goal. I do think Gibson is that. Anaheim's timeline might not fit Gibson's, Friedman says. Putting that into perspective, we do know that Jack Campbell's future with Toronto is currently in limbo. Even though he was looked at as the Leafs' #1 guy last season, the days of Campbell being underpaid seem to be coming to a close shortly. Also, according to Friedman, Dubas already made a contract offer to Campbell, which was 3 years with an AAV of $2.5 million. If he decides to walk, Campbell is looking at a raise in the ballpark of $4.5 to $6 million a season, depending on the team he signs with. Knowing that this could very well be the GM's last chance with the team, Dubas is likely going to want to shake things up. In doing so, the biggest piece that could be moved is William Nylander. After finishing 3rd in points on the roster last season with 80, the forward, if the Ducks were willing, would be an appropriate return piece for Gibson. Even though obviously Toronto would receive more than just Gibson in exchange for Nylander, this could be something that would entice both sides involved. A bold move indeed. If it happened, it would be the Kawhi trade that's been predicted to happen in Leafland. Gibson theoretically would be inspired to play at the same level that helped him win the Jennings Trophy at the start of his career, helping to propel the team to the long-awaited second round. I know, it does sound like a fantasy, but it's definitely fun to ponder. Am I right? As the dust began to settle in Calgary, many were already speculating about the futures regarding several of the Flames' key players. Andrew Mangiapane, Sean Monahan, Matthew Tkachuk, and Johnny Gaudreau are all unfortunately pending free agents that GM Brad Treliving will need to address. And among them is the 115-point man, Johnny Hockey himself. Following a rather mediocre season last campaign, Gaudreau entered the 2021-2022 season with a newfound purpose, considering that it was his contract year, and this could be the biggest deal of his career as well. Gaudreau made no mistake on impressing the hockey world with an offensive onslaught. Following 40 goals and 75 assists recorded, the forward easily had his best season yet at the NHL level. Due to this, as is usually the case in his situation, Gaudreau is going to be due for a massive pay raise. However, as I formerly alluded to, the Flames may not be able to pay Gaudreau what he's truly worth and or expecting. Considering his age and that he finished tied for the second most points scored league-wide, it's safe to say that Gaudreau is set to receive between $9 to $11 million a season on his next contract. According to NHL insider Pierre LeBrun, both Gaudreau and the Flames agreed to wait until the offseason to discuss any potential deal. Even though there's plenty of time to make something happen, it's still possible that Gaudreau wants to move closer to home, with home being Salem County, New Jersey. Obviously, there's the Philadelphia Flyers, who are trying, according to GM Chuck Fletcher, an aggressive retooling. However, despite the lack of success last season for the team, Fletcher would still have to make some adjustments before signing Gaudreau. Gaudreau would be reunited with former Boston College teammate Kevin Hayes and would be relatively close to home. Secondly, there's the New Jersey Devils, who have the adequate space at the present time to likely offer Gaudreau what he'd be looking for long term. And lastly, the most interesting possibility that's come up recently is the New York Islanders. According to Steven Rosner of NYI Hockey Now, he claims that an inside source heard from Gaudreau himself that his desire was to remain with Calgary first and foremost, but if it didn't work out, that Lou Lamoriello would be his very first call. Similarly to Philly, the Isles wouldn't have the space right away, but with a few tweaks could afford to add Gaudreau to the roster. Knowing that the team is older and was slow at times last season, inserting Gaudreau's speed into the lineup could be just what Matt Barzal and company need as a remedy.